difficult clients. Tracy and I had a very brief discussion outside on how to deal with a difficult client, and we started to get into the discussion, and I was like, let's just wait. I don't want to know exactly what you think. I want to talk about it on the Biz Talk. Let's jump into this, Tracy. So, dealing with a difficult, major pain in the butt client, let's say, what's your take on that? How do you deal with a customer like that?
I fired him. Pretty simple.
That's pretty black and white.
It was. I always say that if there is a customer on your book, and this is talking about people that have this ability, like if you're a booth renter, because if you work for someone, you don't just get to fire customers at will.
Right. You don't really have that choice.
Yeah. So as a booth renter or a salon owner, I was able to do this. And I say if you see Sally's name on your book and she's coming in at 5:00 that night, and it ruins your whole day because she's coming in, get rid of her. Not worth it.
Okay, but this, okay. We've had difficult clients here at Young Nails before, and I don't think the first instinct is to just fire them. So, like, you can't tell me if somebody is late one appointment, they're instantly fired. Like, there has to be a conversation that happens, as far as dealing with a customer, right? It's not like you were late once, you're fired.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I've been late to appointments before. It happens.
You've been late to work before.
Yeah, I stay late.
And then you stay late. Okay. Fair enough.
Hours to make up for minutes.
You're correct.
Help me. No, of course. I had very strict policies and guidelines, but I was an understanding person, like traffic or, it happens. My policy personally was, if it was consistent, because you had that one or two people that just never could show up on time. If you were 10 minutes late, I wasn't probably going to get to something in your service. There was that potential that you might not get all the art you wanted or whatever it is. If you were 15 minutes, and I'm talking, this is like several times you've done this, I didn't do you.
Yeah.
And I made a point of that. Like, I can't do you this time, and this is why. Because do it to a doctor and see what happens. Like 3 times, doctor gets rid of you. So that was also my policy. After we had the conversation of, hey, I need you to show up on time, you did that 3 times, and I would remove you as a client.
Okay, but so when you get a new client, though, when you start with a new customer, what does that conversation look like? You basically just like say, hey, here's just so we're straight. Like, this is my policy. I need you here on time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it was posted. Like, that way they couldn't say that they didn't know. Or most people are good about it, right? It's not even a conversation you have to have. So after maybe the first or second time, that's when you could have that conversation like, hey, I do have my policy posted, but this just to let you know, this is my policy because I have to run on time for the next client, and I have a family and I want to get home too.
Right.
This is the policy.
So, okay. Because when you first answered that question, it sounded a little aggressive.
It's harsh.
And it's a little harsh, but now as you expand on it, it's actually pretty reasonable. Like, if somebody's late or and they're consistently late, that's understandable. You have the conversation with them, you guys have the discussion, and if they continue to do it, they've got to be removed. Let me ask you this question. What about difficulty, not so much being late, but what if somebody has a very incredibly difficult personality to deal with, but they're always on time, they tip you very well, but they are seriously very hard to deal with personality-wise? What's your take on that?
I think it depends how much it bothers you. I've had difficult clients that they were just difficult to deal with, but it was manageable. Like, they were good as far as showing up. They paid me well, and I could get through. And then there was the client that I knew no matter what I did, she did not seem happy. Like, I had a conversation with one lady. In fact, it was a family friend. And I finally told her, because it was awful. It just made me miserable. She picked my nails apart. She never seemed happy. She always complained. I finally said, I'm not going to be able to do you after this appointment. After I did the nails, I finished them. And I said, I'm not going to be able to do you after. And she's like, why? And I explained it. I said, you make me feel really horrible. And I don't think you're happy. And I want you to be happy. And I'm not happy. So I think it's just best that I don't do you anymore.
Okay, but where's that?
Where's the line?
Well, yeah, I guess it's like,
if you would pay your client not to come in, like literally, here's some money, please don't come see me.
Yeah.
Get rid of your client.
Okay. So for you, that's your breaking point, is when it's absolutely miserable to the point of like, I would actually pay them money not to show up.
Exactly.
And that's when you're going to get rid of the client. Okay. So here's kind of my take on difficult clients, quote unquote difficult clients, right? We get phone calls from a customer that is extremely upset or pissed off, right, at something that happened.
Right.
It's the nature of business. Now, I wouldn't necessarily say that they're a difficult client. It's kind of a challenge at that point in time, right? But my initial response to quote unquote difficult clients, whether they're calling or they're gonna argue or they're gonna complain, I actually like it. Is that weird?
You are weird.
I am a little weird,
but
I
get what you're talking about, because I enjoy the challenge too of that.
Right. Like I want to see how I can really put all the effort in to make this individual's experience better. It's all really about like, am I ready? I'm ready to listen. Mm-hmm. I want to hear them out and see what the experience is. And this might be a little different than like a difficult client when you're in the chair, because that's a consistent every 2 weeks something is going on, right?
You're holding hands with this person for an hour.
Right.
Every 2 weeks.
Every 2 weeks.
Now, I would say that most of the time when someone calls in here that's upset, it's probably because they have
a bad experience.
Of whatever maybe that they thought was bad, or we all have bad days.
Yeah.
It might have just been bad service on our part.
Sure.
So how are we going to fix that? Whereas a customer that's coming into the salon, that's a little different, right? They're just a difficult person. It's not like they're complaining about my bad service or anything. Right. They're just not enjoyable to be around.
Yeah. So I guess, you know what? The comparison would be a very long time ago, I fired a couple customers. This was early on in the business when we were trying to make ends meet. We were trying to make money. Like, I mean, it was awful, right? And we were dealing with a couple schools. We would sell them kits. We had these cosmetology kits, and I actually did the math. I was like, I just come on board. I was on board for maybe a year, and I pulled up their account. They were very difficult. Like this individual would call and yell and scream, which was like, okay, dude. So I went and did the math, and obviously our margins were very, very slim. We were barely making money. Even if you're making money on that type of client, right? The disrespect is so high. I fired him. Yeah. I said, we're not doing business with you anymore. I apologize. We can't continue this relationship. Why not? How come? Da, 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 da. We just can't continue this relationship.
No.
So
the money's not worth it.
The money's not worth it. Yeah. So I think, I guess I was a little misled initially. Like when we're outside and we were talking and I asked Tracy, what's your take on dealing with bad clients? She was like, I fired him. And I was like, whoa, put the brakes on for a second. Like it's not that reactionary.
No. And it's a conversation. And even at that point of me getting rid of a client, it was a conversation. It wasn't a text. It wasn't a message I left on their phone. It was a verbal conversation with them, either over the phone or in person. Like I said, with the one, I finished her nails and then I told her.
Right.
Now, here's the thing that happened with her, though, is she apologized. She actually cried. And I continued doing her nails.
And then how was the experience moving forward after that?
It was fine.
Yeah.
There was a respect. Now, there was other people that I did this with, and it just wasn't going to work.
Right.
Like, And it was rare. It was rare, but you have to be willing to make that business decision. Now, when I had distribution, it was a little different, right? Because if a person was calling in and complaining, it usually was their shipment didn't get received.
Correct.
We put an order in wrong. No, the only time I got rid of someone, and it was actually a sub-distributor, is they called and they were cussing and screaming at
disrespecting
at the employee.
Yeah.
And this was like the second time.
There's a level of respect. So there's a level of respect that has to happen, correct?
Right.
Like once that line is crossed consistently, right? So like if a customer has a bad experience, I mean, God, I myself have had a bad experience. I've called an organization and I've gone off. I have.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. To the point though where it wasn't very respectful. So like when somebody has a really bad experience, and it's going to happen with anybody's business, I think you have to allow, okay, like they're going to be upset and they may start like they're going to be upset. They might lose a little control.
Right. Right.
So you like I think we got to take that in consideration to deal with that individual customer in that moment. Now, if that's something that's happening like every single time.
Right. And really for this person, it was not legit.
Right.
Like the reason you're yelling is because you don't have product. It was a sub-distributor, but you didn't order the product where you could get it in time. Like
right.
we got it out as fast. I mean, it was stuff like that. It was like, and again, I'm a little more like, if they're doing that to me, that's a little different than when they're doing it to someone that was working for me. I took that a little more personal.
Right. This is kind of a tough one for me because I'll tell you, like, I'm a very big believer in the customer is always right to. So like, I think it's defining.
Where's that line?
Like what does that statement mean exactly? Like the customer is always right. Does that mean that they get to abuse, that they get to disrespect your organization, people go on social media, talk smack about you, and you're just going to come back and be like, oh, it's okay, anything you want? That's not a very good relationship. Like you can't have a disrespectful relationship even with a customer.
Right.
For the customer to abuse employees and even consistently.
And like you said, right. I mean, I've called places, and this is what I always say when someone answers and I'm upset with whatever it is, the cell phone company or whatever it is. I always say, this is not your fault. You did not do this. However, this is what I'm upset about.
Right.
Because the person that answered that phone, they didn't do it to you. Right. But you're upset at the situation. So I always kind of say that first and then go into it.
I think it's really looking at because here at Young Nails, okay, this is true. We are hardcore about our customers. Like we bend over backwards. There's no question about it.
Absolutely.
Consistently every day, our policies are almost, some would say, crazy, right? It's like, if you don't like the product, if you buy it and you're not happy, it's really like, there's no questions. We just change it out.
We want
right?
you to be happy.
Yeah, we want you to be happy. And we have this, we actually care about the person on the other line, the salon or the consumer on the other end. We really do care. And I would say 99.9% of the time, the customer is always right. But there is that one time or that one individual who is threatening, aggressive, disrespectful to the people, organization, and you have to draw that line. You've got to draw that line.
And I think there is a big difference between a clientele and a customer over the phone.
There's definitely a difference.
Definitely, because you're not dealing with them continually and continually. And you do have that a little more of an option of, you know what? I don't want to hold hands with this person an hour every 2 weeks. I just can't. It drives me crazy. They're disrespectful to me. They're, in my time or whatever it is, or they complain and they make me feel horrible about myself. Like the one lady, I just thought about this. I had a girl in my shop, sweetest girl. Like if you upset this girl, you have worked for it. Now remember, they're booth renters.
Right.
My girls, they were booth renters. They had their own business. This lady had broken a nail and she got her in the next day. And the lady sat there and she racked on this poor girl over. Like you should have time every day for your clients that break a nail. I should have not had to wait. I should have been able to get in. I mean, she just, duh. This girl, the sweetest girl in the world, didn't say a word. She got up, she grabbed her purse, she grabbed her keys, and she left. She just left. She couldn't deal.
The tech.
The tech. The sweetest girl in the world. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't say anything. She went downstairs. Yeah. I watched her walk down and she left. And the lady's like, is she coming back? I'm like, I don't think so. But she had it. And maybe, where is that line of, was that good customer service at the time? I think she just had it. So.
Well, so that's, she cracked. Yeah. So you've got to draw the line. Like at a certain point, dealing with a customer that is going to abuse. Mm-hmm. I think that's the thing.
Yeah.
Abuse is never okay. The customer is always right.
Right.
But like, you can't abuse. There is a line that like, you can't abuse someone. No, even if you're giving them money or paying for something, that does not give anybody the right to abuse. You can't do that. Right. So in this case, she didn't set her boundaries.
She never did. Right? Because right. she just took it from everybody. And that's why I was so shocked by it. But that was her breaking point, where when she did come back, I'm like, you need to set guidelines. And then that way this won't happen again.
So she came back.
Well, she didn't come back for her. She came back after she left.
No.
She left me there with the girl.
No, but I'm saying like after it was all said and done, she came back and continued working?
The tech came back.
Okay, did the woman ever come back?
No.
No. The customer bailed and that was that?
That was that. Yeah, that was that. She's like, well, can you fix it? I'm like, I'm booked. Like,
yeah.
And you upset her. Like, right. How did you do that?
Right.
I've never seen it.
Right.
But again, it's setting those the policies and verbally, like this was not the first time this woman did it. So she should have had a conversation long before that, because that wasn't necessarily providing good customer service. I understood it. I understood that she could not, before she had a complete meltdown, she just walked out.
Yeah.
But you have to be very.
I think it's about boundaries, like just in life in general, right? You've got to set boundaries and
communicate.
You got to communicate. Mm-hmm. That's the big thing. Set your boundaries. When the boundaries are crossed, you communicate.
Right.
And if that continues to happen, if the boundaries keep getting crossed, well, then there's one final communication that probably should happen, which is, this is not working out for the both of us. We have to move on. There's no such thing as like a business or any even like friendships or relationships that just last forever when there's continuous abuse.
Right.
If that's happening, there's a major problem. Like somebody is going to lose their frickin' marbles. So it's so big. It's not easy to do. I think that's the thing, is we assume maybe it's simple. It might be simple for some people. Like maybe it was easy for you to set those boundaries. I think there's a lot of people out there that
it wasn't. It really wasn't.
Okay, it wasn't easy for you. But that makes sense.
I knew it was necessary.
Right. For your business, for the long term.
Because I had the experiences and I made myself sick and worried. And I just got to that point, like, to continue in this business, I have to.
Yeah. Yeah. Setting boundaries and communicating when you have difficult clients is the answer. And even for us here at Young Nails, if we have difficult situations that arise with customers complaining, it's a little bit different, but we still ultimately, if you have a client like I had years ago that was just constantly abusing the relationship.
I think that's the difference.
Yeah, I set the boundary and it was like, I'm not going to do this anymore. Like,
Yeah.
not going to do it anymore.
I think that's the difference is the abusive. We have great clients, and there are clients that get upset. Just last week we had one that I called, and she was just upset at the situation. And you know what? I'm like, I don't blame you. And we ended it very well and made her happy, and she had every right to be upset. So I think that's the difference. If you have a right to be upset as a customer, you should let that be known.
Yeah, and the default, like for me, anytime somebody calls and they're mad or upset, my default is, okay, we made a mistake somewhere. That's number one. Number two, I'm going to listen. I'm going to shut my mouth. Seriously, I walk into the situation like that. I'm going to shut my mouth. I'm going to listen. How can I take care of this customer? Now, if I get on the phone and the person is totally unreasonable, that's okay. I still go through that process, listen, open my ears. I want to make it right. We make it right. Now, if that customer on a biweekly basis is doing the same thing and calling over and over and over, when we look at the evidence and it's like we're actually, everything is good, but this is happening on a regular basis. Well, what are my boundaries? This is not, my boundaries are, it's getting abusive. I'm setting my boundaries, no abuse. And now it's time to, I've already communicated. So I'll go back to the client and say, hey, everything's good. Like, we actually didn't make this mistake, but we want to make this work. So I would communicate like that in the beginning. And then eventually, like, after a number of times, if it keeps happening and our employees are getting abused, well, you got to set it right. And look, this relationship's not working. And, we probably shouldn't be doing business together. And I think that's okay to do.
Right. And I don't think, honestly, that's ever happened since I worked here.
No, it actually hasn't.
No,
It actually hasn't.
7 years.
Yes. And for me, it's happened with a couple distributors, where there's that abuse. I mean, obviously relationships have ended for different reasons, but
Of course.
I'm talking specifically about the customer that's abusing. I think it's more common in the salon that you have to deal with it.
I think so. I
And-
think there's a lot of different personalities that come through that door.
Yeah.
And you know what? It might just not be clicking with your personality, but she might go down the street and work perfectly fine for someone else. She can go somewhere else.
Right.
If it's that upsetting, don't let yourself be miserable. And then obviously the client's not happy either. So it's just best to part ways at that point.
100%. I think the key here to take away is, if you run into a very difficult client, you got to set boundaries even before dealing with any difficult clients. The first thing you got to do, you got to set boundaries for your business. What are you willing to accept? What are you willing not to accept? Set those boundaries. When the boundaries are crossed, you communicate with the client, try to make them understand. Obviously, you want to offer phenomenal customer service as a nail technician. Continue to communicate. Ultimately, if it's not getting across, you've got to let that client go. And there is nothing wrong with letting a client go. Over the long term, you're not going to lose your mind. You're not going to walk out of the salon like this one tech did.
Well, I think that's the key, right? Do it respectfully. Do it the right way.
Right.
That way you feel good about it at the end. And you know what? They can't go out there and say, "Hey, Tracy just screamed and yelled at me and kicked me out." And no, it was a very nice, respectful conversation.
They still might
They
say
might.
that.
They might.
Yeah.
And I know that with Yelp and everything, there's a lot of fear of that.
Sure.
But you can't worry about that. You can't let that rule your life.
Right.
But for your own good feeling, do it the right way. Do it respectfully.
You have to do it respectfully. You got to do it the right way. There are things that are out of your control. You cannot control what somebody's going to do. You can't run your business based on, they might give me a bad review. No.
Yeah.
Sometimes you got to just take it on the chin and say, they're going to give me a bad review, but they're not the right client for me. Ultimately, I've got to let them go. And it all comes down to, I always say this, like, what's the right thing to do. Like, you've making the right decision. I always default to like, is this the right thing to do for the business? And typically doing the right thing is the hardest thing. It's usually the hardest decisions you have to make, but they're the best decisions for your business. And with that, I will say, set those boundaries, communicate with your clients. Thank you for joining us this week, and we will see you next week on the Biz Talk.